Hello and welcome to New Consciousness Activation. Today we welcome Dr. Michelle Casto. Michelle, you're a quantum success coach and a light body healer. And both titles or both things I'm extremely curious about, and I'm going to ask you more about them. But right now, if you'd like to maybe go a little bit deeper and to introduce yourself, go ahead, and then I'll start with questions.
Yeah. Well, I started out basically, real briefly, not knowing what I wanted to be when I grew up in college, and happened to come across the Career Center. I was studying adult education at the time, and became a career counselor, and got into career counseling, and then very quickly found coaching, and started off as a coach about 20 years ago, and very early got into the life purpose part of that. Also started writing books fairly early. My first book came out in 1999. And then my body of work, which is what we'll be talking a lot about tonight, the destiny discovery, or helping people awaken to their purpose, started writing itself 10 years ago or so. And basically that is what I'm known for. I'm known for helping people awaken to and step into their life purpose. And also along my own journey, I discovered that I had healing capacities and was an energy healer, and took various different modalities to enhance those natural gifts, and most recently have come into the light body work, which really gets to the core of releasing a lot of blocks quickly at many layers, which is why I would have loved to know about that 20 years ago. But we had to all kind of awaken and step into where we are now, which I feel like where we are now is such a great place. There's so much more possibility before us, even though, what can look like a lot of change and destruction first. But basically, life purpose work and energy work, helping people awaken to their to what they came here to do, is really what my mission is all about.
Wonderful. So, the work that we do is very much aligned, and I want to jump into the awakening part because that's my passion. And I came across something that you wrote in a blog about an awakening, and I'd like to read that because I just so resonate with that. So you said, awakening can be a rude experience. It jolts us out of our slumber into seeing what we don't really want to see or know. It asks us to release our fears and step onto a path of returning to love. It is for the brave of heart. So can you talk about that? Because awakening, this whole conversation, or at least my hope is through these conversations in the summit, we talk about awakening to our new level of consciousness, or activating the humanity that we haven't been yet. And it is a wondrous and magical process, and the potential and possibilities are just magical to me. And yet, I completely agree with what you wrote. It can be quite a painful process at times, and and I bet there is a story behind it, or some experience behind it for you.
Woo. Yeah, it's a big topic, so we'll just all take a nice deep breath right there, because there's a lot of different things I want to say about it. And the first is, I'll say that I do believe that we can choose an easier awakening, and that actually those who are awakening now will actually have that opportunity, whereas those of us 20 years ago or so that started this movement, really it was the hard knot, because humanity seems to learn the hard way, right? And we are addicted to comfort, and we resist change, which is the compelling force to get you on your path of purpose. So there's a lot of different reasons why people resist awakening. The other thing that I will say is that if you think about awakening, if you're lying next to or in another room, somebody who's sleeping, like to woken up, do they like you to clang a bell, or just
I'm sorry,
push them and say, hey, wake up?
I'm sorry, Michelle, can you repeat that sentence, because there was an kind of an interruption there. Just say it again.
Yeah, I was asking y'all. Yeah, no, absolutely. I was just saying, if you know somebody who's sleeping, Do they like to be awakened? Like by you or somebody else? No. None of us likes to be woke up, okay? So understand the level of what I'm saying, right? And so divine is trying to wake up the planet and its humanity. But everybody wants to stay asleep because it's comfortable and because they're sleeping. So there's a lot of initial resistance to the awakening process. However, it's why we're here. It's a big reason why we're here. And we're all here. We chose to be here to go through this awakening to a higher consciousness so we could actually birth a new reality on the planet. That's my belief. Take what I say that resonates and leave whatever doesn't. And here's the deal. If we never awaken, which still a large proportion of the population won't, they will never go on their destiny discovery journey. Okay? They will stay asleep or take the mediocre path that is laid before them. However, the good news is that there are some of us who said, hey, I'll raise my hand and I'll do this hard path. I'll have the rude awakening and I'll wake up so that other people can benefit from that. That's powerful. To me, that's a light worker. That's a light worker who's, I'm choosing to work for the light. I'm choosing to go through pain of awakening and leave my comfort zone to step into my courage zone so I can find out who I really am and what my purpose is and what my unique contribution is to my sphere of influence, right? And so if you notice, like the great thing about social media, well, we found each other on social media, number one, but also a lot of light workers are strategically placed all over the planet, right? And creating sort of a grid. You know, if all the light workers were in, one place, that wouldn't be very effective because I have my sphere of influence where I live, and that extends out, and so on and so on. So awakening. It's a great big topic, and it's one of the I talk about 6 stages in my book of the awakening to your purpose. And so it is one of the most important, if not the most important stage you can go through, because if you don't ever go through awakening, then you can't do the others that come after it. So I'll stop there and then we'll go.
So I know you mentioned that, many people won't wake up, and I want to make it clear to our viewers that it's not something that people are forced to do, or it's even, that there's complete freedom of choice, and the awakening is simply that you're just beginning to remember who you truly are, and you're beginning to shed the illusion. It's sort of like walking out of the Matrix, in the Matrix movie. It's just choosing to really see what reality is about. And there are people who choose to stay in the Matrix, and that's fine. There will be a time when they choose to wake up to it. But yeah, and so have you found, or with yourself or with your clients, that when people make that choice, it really takes just an intention, because there is not like necessarily a step 1, 2, and 3 you have to do. It's really an intention that you set. Then things start coming up. Because there is a lot of stuff we have brought with us or accumulated with us, and things start coming up, and that's really where it may become challenging. It's not that the awakening itself is, a painful process. It's just
we wake up every day.
Right.
We're able to wake up every day. It happens. Sometimes it might be like groggy and we'll be like, oh, I don't want to, but we get up and we do our day. So yeah, it's absolutely attainable. It's a choice because we have free will. And everybody listening probably is choosing to want to have the easier awakening. They're saying, I know there's something more out there for me. They feel that, what I call the yearning undefined. They know there's something more than just paying the bills and going to work and just the mundane reality.
Right.
And that's causing their soul to have them want to appear on a call like this and listen. For some, they've listened to 50 calls like this. For somebody else, maybe the first call. but there's that yearning inside that knows there's something else meant for them, and that's why they're here. Those are the people we're speaking to.
Right.
And I will state that even still, the awakening process usually looks a little messy for most of us. It looks like a breakup or a job loss or something that looks like it's a takeaway, because you have to get shaken up to go, oh, okay, wait a minute. Maybe there is something else I want in my life, right? Otherwise, you're comfortable in your comfort zone. You don't think about it. Now, if all of us were used to change, that would be no big deal at all. I mean, I actually feel like a lot of us were trained to be change agents. I mean, my life has been, I've moved so many times. I've had a lot of relationships. I've had a lot of jobs. I've done a lot of different things because I had to learn how to be more nimble and to help others let go of the path or the thing that they've outgrown so that they can go on their path.
Right.
And that really is a number one reason that I've seen why a lot of folks aren't living their purpose, is because they're still holding on when they need to let go of a situation, relationship, or lifestyle that no longer serves their soul's growth.
Right. So, yeah, and I'm sure you see a lot of the sabotage that people, or self-sabotage that we experience, where it's clear to us that, you know, path A is not the best thing, we should take path B, but yet we keep, you know, forcing ourselves or choosing path A. So I wonder how you help people, you know, clear away those things and take away the self-sabotage out of their path.
Yeah, it's a huge thing, and all of us have at least one inner saboteur that's holding us back or keeping us in our safe zone. I have found the best way to work with that is to bring it on board with the purpose. It's actually to give it a new job. So I actually use my energy work, what I call the quantum success energetics, which is we move the energy, we befriend, we love, accept, bring on board the saboteur into the higher purpose. Give it a new job so that it actually starts to know it's going to get more of its needs met by working with us versus subverting. Because a lot of times the saboteur is just the part of us that's afraid of change, and it does things to undermine us to keep us in a safe space. It's trying to protect us.
Right.
And it's doing the job that we subconsciously hired it to do somewhere when we were a child to stay okay in the world. So all that really needs to be given is more love and attention, and like I said, befriend. We want to get close to it to bring it on board. And another thing too that I do is move it out of the head, which keeps you going in circles. And energetically, we want to bring it down into the heart, into the body, where it's part of us, right? And that's really, really important. And you would not believe the transformation people can have when they actually start taking that wonderful quality of looking out to make sure things are safe, but doing it from a heart wisdom place versus a crazy making or scared or fearful lens that they're seeing life through. Then they actually can start making progress with themselves because they're working more in partnership with their higher self. That's how I would explain that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And we recently had an interview where we talked about with Shamir Ladani, we talked about the connection between the heart and the head, and creating that balance between the heart and the mind, and the fact that heart actually sends more signals to the head than the other way around, or the heart sends more signals to the body than the brain sends more to the body. So I love that, bringing it out of your head and actually allowing the heart to have that compassion and acceptance, and that really transforms the experience. It really reframes it for the person, because allowing love to absorb it all really makes the difference. So I wonder if that sounds like the ego really has the job of protecting us. So it's the ego that I think in the new age community, I guess there is sort of this thing, what do we do with the ego? Do we we get rid of it? Do we embrace it? And I'd love to hear what you say about that.
Yeah, for many, many years, a decade now, I've been saying that there's no part of us that we need to exile, make wrong, or judge, right? And so part of the saboteur becomes a judge, becomes confused, or it's the voice of that. The ego sounds like a judge. It sounds like I'm confused, or it sounds like I'm really controlling. All of those are just aspects of the ego that are trying to get its needs met. All aspects of ourselves need more love, not less, right? So the more we love ourselves, the more we integrate the darker parts, or the parts that we wish weren't there, the more whole and complete and happy we are. So I've said for a long time that the ego serves a purpose. We have to integrate it into the purpose plan, though. Where it is troublesome is when it runs unchecked. And also, another thing I want to bring up is that, and you've probably seen this with your clientele, we often think of the ego as the 3D version of the overinflated egomaniacs that are like attention, attention, attention. But often light workers and out there have an underdeveloped ego where they don't feel enough and they question themselves. Either are dangerous because you're still worried about what other people think about you. And that's the trap.
Right.
And all it is it really is an energetic trap that we can fall into that's not our real self, that takes away power and energy that we could be using to put towards our truth and being just authentic. So that's what I have to say about that. And no matter what it is, one way or the other, it just needs to be brought into balance and brought in to having your soul in charge and not having the ego behind the wheel. Because you'll find in my book, actually, I talk about the stages of consciousness, and that kind of goes with it too. The higher consciousness you become, the more source and soul aligned you are. Right? When you're first awakening, we tend to be in the victim consciousness, right? Everything happens to me. That's a very egotistical way of looking through life, right?
Right.
And we've all been there, and we can go there at times. Then we start awakening. We say, hey, man, I can take charge of my life. I can make changes. I can grow. We become victor, right? We become victors in our life. But that can get really exhausting. And that's like when you become a self-help addict and you read books and you take classes and you're always working on yourself. But you can't do that the rest of your life.
Right.
And who would want to? Huh? So there's the third level of consciousness as we rise. That becomes what I call the vehicle consciousness, and I'll happen to start with these vehicles. When you realize, hey, maybe I'm not the one driving the car. Maybe there is something else I can rely on here to get me through this thing called life. But still, sometimes we want to drive the car. Okay. Now, ultimate consciousness of getting one with ourself and our source is vessel consciousness. We're open to receive as open channels to let it come through, and we are the vessel of that. That takes a lot of inner work, typically. A lot of purification, a lot of like letting go of the egoic masks that we may have put upon us to keep ourselves safe or protected or loved. But that's one of the stages of our soul's journey here, is to come into alignment with our true self and to let go of the masks and the egoic tendencies that just block our path.
Right. Yeah, that sounds wonderful. So let's bring it down to a very practical level. People that are listening today, watching this, that may not be, that are just living their life. They're not looking to be, they're not on a mission to be a light worker, let's say. There's some of us for whom it's like central to our existence, and some for whom it's sort of incidental. So what does awakening look like for them, from your perspective? A regular person that's just living their life, why would they care?
Why
bother? Why
give
it their energy?
Yeah. Um, Better relationships,
Mm-hmm.
more harmony in your life, more health, more happiness, more peace. I think the number one reason anyone would want to bother with looking within, going within, right? And that's one of your quotes. Who looks outside, but the
Right.
one who looks it within awakens, right? And so it's looking within because um, it gives life more meaning. A lot of people are seeking meaning, but they're seeking it everywhere else outside of them, right?
Right.
And that is actually a wild goose chase in many regards.
Mm-hmm.
It's only when we stop looking outside of ourselves and go within that we actually start to connect with ourselves. So we actually have a better relationship with ourselves. We actually begin to have a better relationship with our partner and our family and our children. Maybe we're even more effective at work. It's like it helps us to be our best self. And I feel like that's something that every human being, no matter who you are, desires
Mm-hmm.
at some level. And also one more thing, I'm glad you broke that up about the light worker thing. One thing I encourage a lot of light workers actually to do now is to drop the meaning around the word that it's a choice, but
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't make you better than or less than anyone else.
Right.
It's because I know for me for a long time, that was the one thing that was sustaining my sense of self. And then eventually the divine was like, well, who are you without that?
Mm-hmm.
And that had to go too. Because again, if you are one of those that aspire for something higher, you want to be as purified as possible. So let go of even whatever identity you put towards that. And for those that are just like, hey, I'm just curious about what else I could feel within myself. Maybe I just want to feel happier or healthier. Then that's why awakening to me is the thing to choose.
Right, absolutely. So you just mentioned, it completely. I just had it in my mind. I was so caught up in what you were saying. So when people choose to awaken,
Mhm.
and it may begin with just, I want a happier relationship. I want something better. Um, What are some of the steps that typically follow? What's involved? What can people expect to happen in
Mm.
that mysterious process of awakening? Or
Well, what is awakening anyway? What happens? That's good. It's obviously different for everybody, but definitely I've seen some patterns. You start to ask more questions than seek more answers. You're actually more curious about the way life works, or maybe question your own assumptions. I think that would be the biggest sign that you're willing to awaken, is that you realize that your beliefs are just beliefs. And
Mhm.
maybe they're not even yours. Maybe you picked them up from your family of origin or from society. Part of awakening is just saying, hey, does this belief even work for me? And that to me is also just a psychological form of individuation. It's just healthy. I mean,
Right.
forget about awakening and take the whole spiritual connotation out of it. It's a part of growing up into being a fully actualized human being of, this is who I am and this is what I believe and this is why I believe it, because I've actually questioned my own thinking.
So
Right?
it's in a way it's a maturity process. We're
Yes.
becoming more mature in terms of even our thinking, instead of
Yes.
just accepting certain concepts and certain constructs, and just accepting life is the way it is because has always been this way.
That's right.
We are beginning to have the power to really be discerning about our reality and question why things
Yes.
are the way they are.
Absolutely. And probably we'd also be more willing to make some what looks like risky or out of the box choices
Mm-hmm.
because we believe in ourselves and we say, but I'm choosing this because I love myself enough to choose it. Like a great example is so many people on the planet are locked into jobs where literally their body shows up, but their spirit's nowhere around. You know what I mean? That they're not really engaged with their work. And so if you're not engaged with your work, when you start to awaken, you start to go, I can't live this way anymore.
Right.
And I don't want to be a purpose. I don't have to have my purpose. I don't have to be a light worker, but I need to find something that fulfills my heart and that I can be good at. And so you would be willing to make that kind of life change when you're awakening, because you know the worst betrayal is to yourself. And you realize that you no longer want to betray yourself or lie to yourself based on beliefs that aren't even your own. And all of this, to me, leads to more emotional maturity and emotional health and less stress and just basic inner peace that is priceless, you know?
Yeah, and I'm finding, one of the things that I find interesting when people have midlife crisis, and I kind of reframe it. I mean, they can take a different format, but to me, that's sort of one of those times when a person gets a chance to reassess their life and step out of that status quo and kind of see, should I keep going the way I've been going? Something is not going right. But what I've also been finding, because I've done a lot of work with young adults, I'm finding that a lot of them have stepped into that kind of almost turmoil, like something is not going right. They can't find that that certainty of their life path. So if you think back, and I wasn't there, but if you think back on the 50s and 60s, 1950s and 60s, there was sort of, when you were 20, you knew how your life would be, and you were happy with it. You just accepted this is what a life should be.
Have you read the article or the research that the more choices we have, the less happy we are? Have you come up? Well, this is what I think you're speaking to, right? So back in the olden days, or back in the day when people were more simple, and you got married, you either worked or you didn't work. As a woman, you might have had 3 or 5 different real options as a career. Well, now we are actually inundated with, we could be and do anything, right? And so how does one choose that? So there's actually psychological research that has proven that modern people are actually a little bit less happy because we have too many choices. And we weren't ever really taught how to choose. Right? And think about it, if you don't know yourself and you don't know how to honor what you know, because the people that come to me for coaching, they're very bright, they're very smart, they've read the books, they've taken the training, they know themselves. What they're not doing is honoring what they know. Right. Right? Like you said, that's the sabotage. Knowing I should go this way, but keep going that way. Right? They're not honoring that I should be really going this way. So anyways, this choice thing, oh my gosh, it's like a beautiful gift from the gods, right? That even, I say, angels don't have choice. We have free will, but yet we don't know how to. It's like a sword we haven't been taught how to wield. And pain for how to cut away. Hey, and here's the thing: if you can learn to cut away what's not you, it's much easier to forge a path that is you. However, a lot of those young people you're talking about probably still getting influenced by other people's points of view about what they should do. Right? Absolutely. And so it's hard to go in this direction when everybody's telling me I should go to computers because that, whatever, that's where the money is. So absolutely. And honoring oneself is at the core of awakening.
Right, and yes, that's what I want to say, that the honoring is what we are not taught to do, because we are taught to actually honor the outside. We are taught to distrust. In fact, it reminds me of of an incident with me and my mom when I was, I think, in my 20s. And for some reason I was either like depressed for a while or something, and my mom asked me to go see like a psychologist or counselor or someone. And I was talking to that woman, and she asked me, well, how do you make decisions? And I said, well, I listen to my body. I kind of listen to how my body, like a gut reaction. I listen to how I react, which I was just learning to sort of work with my intuition. And I can't remember exactly what she said, but she looked at me like, girl, are you okay? You know, like she had a very, like,
you were wise.
What is that? Yeah. And I never forgot it, but that was the thing, you know, you're taught to honor the elders, you're taught to honor those that have information around you. And what I do with people, I remove myself from that position of authority. Even with younger adults, I tell them, you always, and they are surprised because I tell them, I will give you the information, but you have to listen to yourself. So let's talk about that. How do you help people, you know, return to themselves? Because I agree, it's at the core of any coaching process.
You know, intuition is one of those signs that of life skills, right? Like if I were to say, you know, here's my 20-year-old young adult, you know, here's your 2 or 3 top life skills, intuition's got to be number 1 or number 2.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's so much stimulation, there's so much information pulling at you, right? And if you don't know your center, it's so easy to get pulled off path or pulled into somebody else's, what I call, universe, and you've lost your orbit, right? You're now orbiting somebody else's universe and galaxy, and you're completely lost, right? And it's usually because we want to people please or please all of that, what you said. So intuition is such a vital skill, and this is something that everybody could do, you know, right now or after the call, is like, you know, what is, here's one I do with my client. I just did this with my client today, in fact. She had 3 different options in front of her. And I said, okay, Sherry, I'll call her. Okay, option 1 is this, option 2 is this, option 3 is this, and the 3 doors, imagine in front of you. Now, imagine yourself walking through that door. How does it feel 6 months into what you're doing, a year into that? And feel into your body and your gut instincts what those possibilities are like. Because like you said, your body, your heart knows. It's a feeling and a knowing, and sometimes an actual like, right? Like a lot of times it can be as simple as a gut reaction, like or right? It feels like I'm gonna do that. And if we would learn that basic of like door 3,
right,
like, oh, that feels good, and actually go, wow, door number 2, although it looks really good, everybody tells me it's got the pretty certificate on there, and it's got money signs, and it's got all the dressings of what I'm supposed to want, but it doesn't feel like a yes.
Right.
If we would honor those moments and learn that early and often and follow our intuition early and often, we would have a blissful, happy life.
Right.
We really would.
And, you know, do you notice that the more you use your intuition, the more it begins, it's like a muscle that you get to exercise, and the more, the clearer, I guess, the signals are coming in, and the more information comes in. And I also, I guess, I want to ask you your experience with the different ways in which people get their intuitive information, because it's really very different how we perceive or experience it. So what's been your experience with that?
That's one of the first questions I ask with all my new clients is like, how does your intuition speak to you, and how you know, and how much are you following it? And there's a lot of different ways, but you know, if you just take the 5 senses, visual, auditory, kinesthetic, all of those, some people will see things. I know, for example, in my own life, when I lived in Atlanta, Georgia, I was like, well, I think maybe I want to move to Texas. And as I opened up to that possibility, it's like I saw a license plate. I'd look at pieces of paper, and Texas was written on it. And, you know, Texas was just, you know, there was visible signs.
Mm-hmm.
Could be your intuition could come to you through the radio. Sometimes it's like that. It's like visible or auditory things that you can sense and feel around you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think usually it's a combination of these, but that's some ways that it could be. Another way is like you were sharing with that gut feeling of like it just feels right or it doesn't feel right.
Right.
A lot of folks need to work on that one because that's one we weren't taught, right? It's really obvious if you see a piece of paper and it says Texas. For most of, but you'd be surprised. Some people like don't make the connection. But if you're paying attention, we are being given clues all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It literally is like us in a forest looking for our way, and the divine higher self, whatever you want to call that, is leaving us little clues. And if we pay attention to them, that's our intuition speaking to us, and that's how we can find out. A great way is to journal or ask yourself questions and script write. Ask a question and then let your deeper self answer. You might be surprised what your intuitive self knows if you would just take a moment to ask the question.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I have, I'm a hypnotherapist, so I use hypnosis to do very similar work. And so some people, are extremely visual, and they begin to experience, if you ask them to imagine something, or even like the 3 doors that you mentioned, imagine that you're walking through this and what do you see, they will just create this elaborate visual image, right? And then I have clients who are really not visual at all. And they sometimes think that there's something wrong with them. And so there is a way to really, teach them to just refocus. Because one of the things that I help people do is connect with their bodies and just really notice if there is something that they notice in their body as an intuitive, like a chill or a warmth, or, it's like some kind of actual physical shift, right? And that's how intuition can come in too. And it's really there's not like a prescription. Well, if you develop this is how it's going to arrive, so we kind of have to really get to know ourselves.
We do, and that's really it. And finding out how does our intuition speak to us is really important. And then it's again paying attention to what you hear.
Right.
You could get the goosebumps, or you could get the chill, or you could get the signs. But if your cognitive choice-making, willful part doesn't follow through, then the self-doubt wheel can start, and then you can think that you don't know. And actually, that's one of the more common saboteurs that I've seen is the confused.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what to do. I don't know. What do you mean? Yes, you do. And then I always have to say, okay, pretend like you have a magic wand, right? And zap, now you know.
Right. Absolutely.
9.9 times out of 10, then they know. But that mind that wants to keep us going in circles, because I guess somehow we think that's fun, I'm not sure, will tell us that, we don't know when we actually do. But the thing is we'll set ourselves up for that not very fun ride if we hear the intuition and we fail to follow through with it. But like you said, it's a muscle. The more that you listen and follow through, the more you actually start dancing with destiny. That's what I call it.
Absolutely.
Right? That's when it starts to become a dance. And the other thing I say about that too is if you really want to listen to your intuition, you want to have an easy awakening and you want to dance through it, and look like, pretty graceful. Versus what I've seen, like the herky jerky, which I myself have done. So I know what that looks like. Very disjointed. It's not pretty. My point is, do the dance that's yours to do. Try your best not to imitate somebody else's dance. And that's the other thing that will trip us up with our awakening, is that we'll compare ourselves to other people. I mean, that's just seems to be humanity. We compare. But if we can avoid that, then we can say, hey, I'm doing a salsa, right? I'm not doing a 2-step And just because everybody else right now is doing the two-step,
Right.
I need to stay with my salsa because this is how I roll, you know, and learning to honor that about ourselves, that's emotional maturity. And that's why I'm glad there's people like you and me and others that are on the planet that can help guide people
Mhm.
that have lost their sense of connection to themselves, regain it, strengthen it, build up that inner foundation so that you can actually start stepping forward in life and actually experiencing some progress. Because honestly, that's one of the number one needs that we have as human beings. It's not the money, it's not even relationships a lot of times, it's progress.
Mhm.
To know that we are making progress towards our goals and progress in our inner development, especially for those that are awakening, it's really, really important.
Right. And fulfillment, probably. I mean, and I guess progress gives us that fulfillment that
Mm-hmm.
it's not for just to put bread on the table, but it's actually to, experience life in a new way. And I
Yeah,
think to,
because we're feeding our soul. We're
right,
feeding
right.
something deeper. And I think that that's the hunger that probably all those listening to your show are looking to fill. Is how do I fill
Mhm.
that inner hunger?
Right. And, to be fair, you said that, that we've lost the connection to ourselves. I think the connection has been lost for the thousands of years that we've been here. And right now, the awakening is that we're actually starting to connect, and really remember who we are. And it's, I think for every single one of us, it's not necessarily like just 1, 2, 3 process. It's a process that probably may take a few lifetimes for us to get, I hope not more than a few lifetimes.
I'm
I
glad you
hope.
brought that up because,
Yeah.
real briefly, my book is based on 6 stages. So we talked about
Oh,
awakenings number 1. There's 6
okay.
of them. And
Yeah, let's talk about them.
okay,
Yeah, go
well,
ahead.
real quick, after you've awakened, then what?
Right,
Right?
right.
But there to me, they kind of go together
Mm-hmm.
over and over. But basically, you can predict that, okay, awakening, then you move into awareness of like, okay, well, maybe I am supposed to make this move or do this thing. You might have some dreams or some ideas or read a book that brings you new awareness. And then you move into acceptance, like that stage 3. A lot of folks come to me in stage 3, which is acceptance, because they've sort of awakened and become aware of who they are, but they're not accepting it yet. They haven't taken ownership,
Right.
and help with that. Then we can move into what I call articulation, which is being able to say, this is who I am, this is what I do, and
Mm-hmm.
related to what I do, which is purpose work. This is my purpose, and this is how I express it in the world. Only then is there stage 5, which is action, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm actually sending some energy to everybody right now. So action, a lot of us just want to get into action, but there's some stages that we have to integrate. And then stage 6 is allowance. And that's when we can start flowing with our dance. But
Right.
even at stage 6 at allowance, you're always going to be awakening to another level. So
Mm-hmm.
it's continually happening. It isn't once and we're done. It's a
Yes.
continual evolution of our consciousness,
Right.
literally. And yet I felt like I was gifted with the ability to break down some of these key stages that people can expect to go through and have a map for the navigation that they're going to need to get through it quicker, easier, and with more ease and grace.
Right. So the thing that keeps coming to me is that sense of fear as people are going from stage to stage, or as people are, maybe not from stage to stage, but as people are coming to the point of, well, I now see that I am this, and I should now do this and make these changes. I think
Mm.
one of the big moments that kind of holds us back is fear. Because sometimes many of us are afraid to be seen. Sometimes we are afraid to make waves in the status quo sort of that we have in our lives. And there are multiple things that can generate that fear of stepping out and having something new happen. So I wonder how what advice you have for our viewers, or how you work with your clients to heal that.
Yeah, for me, it has to do a lot with rebuilding our inner foundation. And I start with helping them get clear on their values. Like, are they living their values or someone else's values? And getting really clear on that. Intuition, working up their intuition, their intuitive gifts, and their guidance. Getting clear on their purpose is part of that. Clarity helps a lot, because no one's going to move forward if they don't know what they're moving forward towards.
Right.
It's fear of the unknown and fear of change that are the two biggest fears that hold us back from truly awakening and blossoming. Right? And so the best way is those key things, but then absolutely 1,000% mentoring, coaching, energy healing, hypnosis, anything that's helping you get connected and going within to find those answers and to honor what you find and hold a container and give you some structure to move that forward. That is what helps people move out of fear and come into faith and actually come to the level of, on the emotional scale of consciousness that David Hawkins put out in Power versus Force. 200 is at the scale of courage, where we can actually start moving up into the higher consciousness realms.
Right.
And until we get to courage, we are straddled with fear and shame and guilt and some of those lower levels that vibrate very low. And it's really difficult to make changes or make progress when you're vibrating there. And that's why I'm going to say me, because we are social creatures. We need each other. You need somebody who's vibrating at a different level, who can activate your light body and activate your thinking and activate your heart, so that you actually start accessing courage and willingness to change and raise your vibration. Right. And that's the light body healing work that I was led to. That's part of what accelerates your process. Otherwise, it can take painstakingly long, which is the road I took. But
so I'm going to come back to this in a minute, but you kind of almost answered my next question, because I wanted to bring up the fact that, I've noticed that coaching really has taken on, it's sort of the new paradigm, right? It's the paradigm of the new consciousness of how we work with each other. I think, 20 years ago, people would have gone maybe to a psychiatrist or psychologist to kind of fix them, and would go for years and would try to work, the issues that they have from the past. And nowadays, it's the coaching and mentoring that, we offer to each other. And I like what you said, that, we need each other. And another thing is that the light workers are neither better nor worse than anybody else. We are on the same path, but we can, and probably you have used a coach for something in your life. I use coaches for something in my life. So yeah, I wanted to hear what you think about this new paradigm of really finding a coach that can help you through a certain sort of process.
Well, for me, it's so easy to choose. It's like, if you were to go on a safari, you would never go out into the jungle without a guide.
Right.
I mean, it's kind of like welcome to the jungle, people. Why chance it? And for me, I guess I've always been willing to say I need help. I was always as a kid raising my hand. I wasn't embarrassed to not know. Right?
Right.
Some people have to overcome their ego tendency of like, I don't need help, or you need a life. Like, people are so judgy. Like, you need a life coach. Like, who needs a life coach? I'm like, well, exactly the ones who are saying that typically are the ones who most need it. But that's another story. I'm saying that there is something beautiful about connecting with someone and shortening your learning curve. Being shown the shortcuts, being shown like, hey, go this way. This is the direct path to where you want to go.
Right.
And helping someone, we all are mirrors for each other. We need someone to help us see our brilliance. It's like, wow, I didn't know I had that, you know? And then we also need someone to say, I got to work on that. You know, we need to see the blind spots too.
Right.
And we cannot receive that kind of guidance usually from people in our immediate surroundings. They just trigger us too much.
Mm-hmm.
So we need a non-partial, connecting person that's holding sacred space. And
Absolutely.
you will know the right coach or energy worker or hypnosis person or whoever you're looking to find by your feeling of connection with that person. You'll just know, I want to work with that person, you know, and you'll get a gut feeling about it. And I've found every guy that I've ever had that way, and I've gone seeking a lot too. And absolutely, those of us who are doing this work, I believe, have a responsibility to continue to do their work too, to keep going higher. And yeah, there's a lot of people that go into coaching that want to become coaches that don't get a coach. I'm sorry, that's not legit. Okay, it's not. You know, just because you go to work from home does not make you, and you like to give advice, does not make you a coach. There's a lot to it, and a lot of that has to do with being willing to look at your own stuff and continue to grow. And absolutely, I have had all kinds of coaches and guides and energy healers over the past 20 years that have got me to where I am now. And I know for a fact that I would not be where I am if I had not said, yes, I'm worth it, and I'm going to invest in my transformation because my life and my happiness matter. And that's what everybody that's the choice that you have to make, is you have to decide that you're worth it to have a better life.
Absolutely. And you said something earlier about flexibility and flexibility to go with the process. And I kind of wanted to come back to it for a minute because I think it's important to understand there is not really, although there is ultimate enlightenment, yes, we're all heading towards it. But I think within this lifetime, 5 years from the 2012 shift, right, we are not necessarily in danger of a total immediate enlightenment. So, we have a little bit of ways to go. And so the flexibility comes in the fact that as we take a step and we move towards enlightenment, we allow new things to come up to the surface and new things to be released and new things to enter our awareness, things that before. And that's the awakening. It's like, when you open your eyes, you start seeing things around you that, you couldn't see before. And so new things come in, and it's a constant process, but it's really a process of discovery of ourselves. And the flexibility is really important in that because it allows for the process to happen. Have you experienced that as well?
That's true. Everything that you said there is very true. And you haven't seen the book cover, but the book cover is the Destiny Discovery. It's got a treasure chest on it filled with lights and footprints coming up to it. And it speaks to exactly what you're saying. It's a visual for that we are discovering the treasure that's right within us.
Right.
That's our enlightenment process. We are the treasure chest. It is us. And that's part of what we're learning. And the Destiny Discovery is like, when are we the most happy? When we're in discovery. When we go to the beach and we're like, oh, it's a cool shell. Or like, we're on the top of a mountaintop, we've never been there, and we discover a new vista we never saw. That's what life's about. That's why to want to awaken. It's discovering something you never saw before. Most people would choose to live the same day or week or reality for 90 years. It's the same, right? Or you can choose to be like a child and go, wow, I discovered a new shell today. I painted myself a magic wand. Right? And this is what I do. And it's like, hey, that's cool, right? Because to me, there's magic wherever we look. And discovering that is enlightenment.
Right.
Because really, if you want my bottom line about why we're here as souls, is to return to the love and innocence that we are. That's the destiny discovery. And even the purpose work that we do in the world, that's just an expression of it. It's not the whole enchilada.
Right, right.
It's the essence.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
The essence.
So I want to revisit the light body healing for a minute, and just to maybe make it a little bit clearer to our viewers. So can you kind of maybe summarize how do you define light body healing?
It really energizes, clears, and releases all the different mental, emotional, physical levels. And it does it with ease and grace. And it works at, like, all of us have a 3-foot or so radius outside of ourselves that is our light body. It's actually working at that level, and it clears karmic loops and patterns that have been stubbornly refusing to go any other way. Light body healing is based on the Merkaba. That is my logo. That's been my logo for a long time. When I first got it, I didn't know what it was. It was, kind of came in, and then I've been exploring it ever since. But basically, light body healing is the fastest way to clear emotional and mental stuff that's standing in the way of you feeling good. And it's in conjunction with the divine. And it's nothing. It's not like I am using this when I'm doing it. Really, right. But there is that magical sense of, like, moving the energy and changing the vibration and really upgrading the frequency of the person.
Right.
And I believe it works when you're working with a practitioner who's got a vibration that can hold yours with love and intention in a certain way, and can actually take you to that higher level. But I mean, it would look like a session of, like, looking at your basic beliefs and taking you through a basic process.
Right.
The magic is happening in the background. There's I wouldn't say there's special words to it. There's not like a particular protocol. But it is just someone saying, hey, I feel afraid to step onto my path of purpose. Okay, well, we start there, and then we work it through the beliefs and through the emotions and all of it. But it's done at this bigger level.
Right.
And I can't really explain it other than it's kind of, what I mean? Like, it's hard to explain. But that's the best we can do.
And Merkaba is the energy body, is our light, around us, right? It's the energy, and it's like it's like the Star of David, or 2 stars of David that are
correct.
Can't speak either.
Supposedly, it's how we get around in our light body. But if we can learn to kind of harness that energy and spin it, if you will, within our own tube torus, because each of us has a tube torus that we're actually pulling in thoughts and consciousness, and we're spitting it out the whole time. Right? When we can change what's coming in and going out, that actually changes everything, because we actually are our own planets. Like, we're moving around, and my little system is bumping up against your system. It can get really interesting. But basically, if we can learn to manage our own universe, which is our thinking, our feeling, and our actions, and get help with clearing the stuff that we can't clear on our own, then again, that would be somebody who's ready to awaken quicker and more rapidly.
Right. So as we near the end of our conversation, I want to go to my favorite word, which is quantum. So you are a quantum success coach. So talk to us about what quantum means to you and why you put those two together, quantum success.
That's a great question. Quantum to me is being able to get the most for the least effort.
Sounds good.
It really is. It's like harnessing your potent energy to get the biggest results, right? The littlest thing can have the biggest results. And it's working with the infinite intelligence or whatever you believe is how this whole thing works. It's not from a particular point of view, but it's like working with that universe that you are to figure out how you're going to dance with destiny and what's in the way of that. And success and happiness is what we're all here. That's what most of us want. Based on your version of success, that's why I put quantum and success together, because it can be as wild and crazy as you want it to be, or as sweet and simple as you want it to be, because it's your version. But it's just having it quicker and with more ease and grace, now, and not having to wait, too long for it.
Yeah, wonderful. Now, and I'd like to add to it, to me, quantum also means that as we make the changes within our individual lives, that it begins to affect. It makes changes. We are like a hologram, that we are just a part reflecting the whole. So as we make changes within ourselves, and that's really the magic of the awakening process, as we awaken ourselves, the whole planet begins to awaken. And so we may think that we're just improving our lives, but we are really making magical strides for
I love that. That's very true.
Humanity.
Yes.
Woohoo!
Yeah, what we do for ourselves, we are doing for everyone, because actually at the quantum oneness level, we are all one.
Right.
So actually, if you're one of those who's altruistic, you can actually say, hey, I'm awakening for my children's sake. I'm awakening for the world's sake. Mm-hmm. And that's a great way to see it, because absolutely, you're right. What we do for ourselves, we do for everyone.
Yeah. Well, this is a great place to stop. So before we end, Michelle, I'd like to ask you, what are you up to nowadays? What would you like to bring to our viewers' attention? If you want to talk about your free gift or anything that you want to tell them, please go ahead and do.
Okay. Well, I would definitely invite them for the free gift, and that's at coachmichellecasto.com/activation. And there you will find my entire PDF version of my book, as well as some companion meditations and self-discovery meditations to kind of get you jump-started down your path. And that's absolutely free. And then the other thing I would say is come on over. If you're on Facebook, I have a free group. It's called Quantum Success Club, and we get together. It's a private group. We get together and talk about all things like this. And I share a lot of free Facebook Lives or events that I'm doing, telesummits, resources, and things like that. So it's absolutely free. So come on over and say hello there. And definitely get on my email list and stay in touch.
Wonderful. Well, Michelle, it's been an absolute pleasure. It's so wonderful to know that there are fellow coaches around the world that are, committed to this process, but committed to their own self-work and also to helping others. And we are really all in this together. There is nobody kind of that stepped out of the river. We're all walking in this water together. And it's an honor to talk to you and have you as a fellow coach as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.